Everyone has some sort of a closet that's become too small. A closet is no place to live, and I want to support as many people as I can in stepping out of that prison into the fullness of life that's waiting for them on the other side of that closet door. I'm Nancy Shadlock from Centered Life Coaching. Join me in listening to these Coming Out Chronicles. Get curious about your story, and then see what good things are waiting for you on the other side of your closet door.
I'm so excited for you to meet my guest today. Vicki Saunders is a serial entrepreneur, an award-winning mentor, and the founder of an organization called SheEO, which I've shared with you a little bit about before, but it's a radically generous organization that supports female identifying entrepreneurs to really excel in their business and to tackle the world's to-do list and things that other people might be forgetting about or putting aside, and really helping the world become a better place. So it's been really cool to be part of this organization, and I'm so happy for you to meet the founder today. Vicki's also one of 30 women that were named world-changing women in conscious business. And a quote that I found on her website that I think really articulates what she's all about is, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." And that's by Buckminster Fuller. So join me today and be inspired about a way that you might be able to come out in your own life of believing certain beliefs that you used to believe and come out from them into a more spacious and free way of being in the world. Enjoy. Vicki Saunders, it's so awesome to have you on the show today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I can't wait to hear your take on the coming out story.
Yeah, I can't either. Who knows what I'm going to say?
Yeah, you're wondering too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure you have a few different thoughts rolling around, and so I'll just throw it to you, and feel free to share kind of the context of what comes up for you when you think of coming out and what that looked like in your context.
Yeah, it's really a very beautiful invitation. What is your journey of coming out? It's been a long, painful one. Let's start there. I often wonder why this human journey is so challenging. Like, why is it designed this way? It feels kind of like hazing. Are you sure you really want that? Are you sure you really want that? It's like all these tests along the way. So mine is, it wasn't like a single incident kind of thing. It was much more a journey of like minor and then major and then gigantic ahas on the way to this is what my being wants to get to let out of itself in many ways. And so, I kind of feel like we're born into this place with all the things, and then they get pulled out of us, deconditioned out of us, or conditioned out of us. And then it's this journey back to self over time, if that's not too meta for you. And so I have always wanted to be free from as long as I can remember back as a little kid, always thinking like, where can I be the most free? From a job perspective, from a place living perspective, from relationship perspectives, how can I be the most free? And then just, along the way, most people are like, that's not possible. That's not a thing. Despite the fact that we're, quote unquote, supposed to be free. And what would it feel like to be free? And of course, we all are free if we get out of our own way. But it's really just that unraveling of like, who says you can't do that? Who says that's not possible? What if it was possible? And so I've really built this muscle over time of like interrogating, the word everyone's using right now, like the deep dive into self, interrogating what I want to be in the world, what's stopping me from being that, and and my increasing ability to believe that I have the efficacy to change that. It's really been a journey of that. And so, And then I think there was probably maybe one moment, which is like, I turned 50. And when I turned 50, I was like, enough of this insanity. Like, all these people that are trying to change, I am amazing. Thank you very much the way I am. And thank you for all of the feedback around what's not right with me, but bye-bye. I don't want to talk to you people anymore. And, like, really, what if you were enough? What if I was enough? And what if I did actually have a really interesting idea? And then it was kind of jumping off the cliff with that, really, with SheEO. I spent my entire life avoiding doing anything women only because of the conditioning around things that are women only are not valuable, are not worthy, are sidebar little things that never grow. They're not important. That's not where the power lies, like all of the conditioning. And so I had to do a lot of work to get rid of all that stuff in order to receive the gift that came to me from the universe, which is this incredible design for the SheEO model. And it felt in my heart and soul through my entire body, this is meant to be. This needs to happen. I can completely see it working. I can see what it's going to look like. I can see how it's going to unlock so many of us. And it was just one of those big trust your gut. After trusting everyone else's feedback for many years, which never got me where I wanted to go, never brought out the best me. And so that's where my brain goes to start this off.
And in what I've heard of your story, it sounds like you had a lot of mini steps of trusting that and of like stepping out of corporate the way that most of us think of corporate. Can you kind of walk us through that journey?
Sure. I mean, I can start with like one of my big aha things. So I actually thought one of the places I could be most free was in academia. What was I thinking? So I did my master's and I was going to do my PhD. And then I started to like interview my profs basically. And a lot of them were like very dissatisfied with their work. Like, I have to teach all these like intro courses, blah, blah. And I really just want to work on this. And the more people I talk to, I'm like, oh, no one really seems to be happy doing this stuff. Maybe that's not the place where you can be free. There's all these rules. And at that point, like in my early 20s, I was kind of unaware of like the structures that we were in, like the systems that created those results. And so I started to like rethink, maybe I don't want to do this. And I got on a plane and I went to Europe to take a little break. And right after I got there, the wall fell down in Berlin and like everything changed. And I got on a train and immediately went over to Eastern Europe, thrilled to be part of like this big change in history. And I stayed for 4 years. And what happened for me there, I was in crowds of people on the streets in Prague, which is where I ended up staying. And everybody was dreaming about what they were going to do now that they were free. It was just like the perfect place for somebody who's like seeking freedom. I went to the place that was just becoming free, right? It's like pretty epic. And so I'm on the streets and everyone's like, I still have goosebumps through my whole body when I think about this. Now that I'm free, I'm going to do this. Now that I'm free, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm free too. What am I going to do? Right? It was just this like DNA reboot. And I just started to dream. And everything at that point, like nobody said no in Prague at that time. Everyone's like, great, go do it. Anything's possible. The tanks have left. You can create your life.
Wow.
And so I started a business and then I started another business and then I got all my friends to start businesses. And I was this huge catalyst for like, follow your dream, follow your bliss. And then one day someone asked me at an event at the Canadian Embassy in Prague, why are you doing all of this here in your own country? Like, why are you being this catalyst for entrepreneurship and da-da-da here instead of at home? And I thought, oh, that's like a really big question. How would I create the conditions that felt like Prague in Canada or anywhere for that matter? And it has literally been my lifelong path ever since that question got asked of me. How do you create the conditions for people to be free, to reach their potential, to reach their dreams, etc.? And I have experimented for that for 25, 26 years. All kinds of initiatives, companies, playing with all kinds of funding, finance for social, like all the kinds of things to unravel it. And SheEO is the sort of like my answer to all of that experimentation.
Wow. And like, if you could choose, a handful of elements that it needs to create those conditions for people to be free, what would you say they are?
Yeah. So the number one underlying thing is radical generosity. I spent quite a bit of time in my life with my mom and her wild women friends, hours and hours and years hanging out with them. What's the meaning of life, right? Seeking the wisdom that they all had. They were just a fun, incredible group of women. And I noticed that generosity, first of all, my mom is like a radically generous person. She passed a few years ago, but she really just showed me how you can take generosity to the next level, caring for others, being thoughtful, and how being generous with others when they're not quite perfect, they make mistakes, all these things are going on. If you have a generous response, people tend to keep on their path of being bold about who they can be. And when you're harsh to people and you create harsh conditions, we make ourselves smaller. And so I also, so the radical generosity is like a step above generosity. It's a stretched generosity. What if the radical is put in front of generosity because I have learned over time that if you want to create new behaviors, you have to create new language, because we will sit into our language where it is and defined and stay at that level. But if you stretch yourself to, like, what would it mean to be radically generous? It's a practice. I work on it every day. And so radical generosity is kind of the underpinning of that environment. And so that would be like phase one. And then the other really big thing is getting us to shift from this concept of scarcity, which we've all been taught is a thing, and it's not, to abundance. And we have everything we need around us, literally everything we need around us. So there is enough for everyone. There's enough food for everyone on the planet. It's just distributed unevenly. There is enough of everything. And there's enough for everyone. So that's a big shift, because we have really, really marketed scarcity, right? Only 4 days left, only 3 trips left. You go online to book a trip, you used to anyway, in the old days before the pandemic. And it'd be like 6 other people are looking at this. It's just about to go, and it's manufactured scarcity.
Yeah.
And the manufacturing of scarcity, it gets in our bones. So we are not enough. And we never have enough. And so we like fight with each other to get more and more, to accumulate. So we think we have enough. And it's a sickness. It truly is a sickness. And so in our environment at SheEO, this concept, we practice asking and giving with each other, giving and receiving. And it's just this constant flow of gifts given, accepted, and reciprocated. It's just like this beautiful cycle. And how that manifests, if just to get like super specific, is every week on calls in our SheEO community, you'll come on and somebody will ask for something. And if you have it in overflow, if you have a connection to somebody who has it, you make that introduction so that that person gets what they're looking for, and you start to ask for things you need. And it really starts to get us to realize that also this idea that I have to do everything myself, like the hero's journey, is also one of those lies that really holds us back. I mean, one of the most delightful things I've learned over the years is some people like to do spreadsheets. What? Here I am as an entrepreneur doing all these things, and I'm like, I hate spreadsheets, can't stand them. Someone likes that? No way. And when you ask them to help and that's their gift, they're like, oh yeah, I do this in my sleep. I love it. It's so much fun. Thank you for asking. And so you start to realize that the things that you are not actually good at or aren't motivated by or, jazzed with, there are other people who are. And when you ask them, they get engaged in what you're doing. And it creates this tighter relationship and more interconnection, this connective tissue that actually makes us realize we can do anything when we're all connected together. And when we ask each other and we share, and when we're singular, isolated by ourselves, it really does feel like scarcity is a thing. So getting into community and building relationships is everything. So for me, it's like radically generous environment, values, with people coming in and resourcing each other so that we can all reach those things that we want to. Need mentorship, need funding, need a connection. All of those things, when they're shared, creates like this sort of upward spiral of dreaming and an upward spiral of being more bold about yourself. Like, I kind of feel like I can do anything right now, and I'm just getting started. It's only been 5 years, 5.5 years in SheEO. We're one step removed from whoever we need. You come into this community, people really want to share. It's not a community for takers. It's a community for people that are like reciprocally giving, receiving, giving, receiving. And it's makes you happier. You know, I don't think I've ever been so happy in my whole life because of this, you know, not because I'm not putting I'm constantly saying I'm not enough. I don't have enough. Oh my God, I don't have those connections. It's just really shifted it for me.
I've experienced that firsthand as well. Like I was on a call a few weeks ago, and in the small group, someone was sharing that they're really passionate about spreadsheets and really good at them. And I was like, I hate that stuff.
Yeah.
So we had a call, and she helped me, and she shared me with this thing that she's working on. And then as we were chatting, I could hear that, you know what, I think I could help her with some of her visioning stuff, and like being able to understand her own superpowers more and how to express that in the world. And so then I shared with her one of my superpower sessions, and it's just like so beautiful to feel that generosity, and not with strings attached. Like I didn't have to give her something, but then I wanted to, because it was just so beautiful what we were exchanging with each other.
That's so great. Yeah, it lights you up and then you're like, wow, does anyone else need help? I can help somebody else. You know, what else could I do? It's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
And the other thing I've been trying to reach out to as many people as I can in the group, and, get to know them. And the other day I was on a call with one person that was saying that your business will grow at the speed of trust. And
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, yes, that's such a huge piece that I think so many entrepreneurs are missing, because we're just like, go, 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 faster, grow. But if you're feeling like you're spinning your tires, it's probably because you're not growing trust in relationships along the way.
Yeah, I think, well, that's just a beautiful insight. And it's what we really, really witnessed during the pandemic.
Hmm.
So a lot of the businesses many of the businesses in our community actually did well during this time. You know, they pivoted, but they worked together partly because they are in deep relationship with one another and in our community. And so when the going is tough, it's like, can I buy your product? Can I support you? Are there introductions I can make? Oh, you need to pivot. I can help you with that. And so when you're in relationship together, you're more resilient when the times
Totally.
get tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And what was that like for you, like stepping out of those circles where you said yourself, like you kind of doubted whether a female business and a female, like all this stuff could succeed. And then, all the peers in your corporate world. And I don't know, did you have shame? Did you have feelings like that where you're like, oh.
Well, I mean, so I never doubted that women are powerful and amazing ever. I knew that from the very beginning. It's just I witnessed how women were treated, and I witnessed how women only things got treated. And so, if you know what, if I was going to start something like that, there's just such a gender barrier to getting anything off the ground, which is extremely annoying. And however, so I mean, I understand that who I was in the past Vicki, was very much conditioned by I'm still very conditioned by the world I'm in, but I'm like literally getting the layers off me every day of the stuff that we're told. And so, I was 18 years old when I took a women in literature course at university and realized for the first time, oh my God, women are oppressed. Why didn't someone tell me? Like I was reading through this book, of course, taught by a guy, classically, women in literature. And I hadn't seen it, right? It was like someone peeled back the curtain and I went, oh my God, this is unbelievable. How we talk about women, how we sexualize women, all the things. And so I came back home, and I have 3 brothers, and I started to rage about everything in the summer when I came home. And I'd be like, why do I have to do this? You didn't ask them to do that. How come this? Why did you say this way? Like all the constantly. And I was reading Germaine Greer at the time, who's this like amazing feminist from Australia. And by the end of the summer, my brothers just started calling me Germaine whenever I opened my mouth, right? And I started to recognize that when I shared how I felt and expressed what I noticed about how women were treated unfairly, I got shut down and nobody would listen. And part of my thing was, how do I have the impact I want to have in the world? How do I share my experience when it's, and so I just went, okay, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. I'm just going to put my head down and do, and that should probably work. And I did all the things. And then, I saw that it didn't matter what I did. I even took a company public and it still wasn't enough, right? For the system that is in place. There were still things wrong with me, no matter how much I succeeded. And so it was mostly me having to like shed that stuff, not listen to the external voices, trust my path. And then of course the timing of the world is so beautiful with all of this, because we started SheEO around the point where people were really starting to understand the systemic biases and the structural inequities that keep everything in place the way they are. And so it seems now like people are really, I mean, probably we're going to get all this gender stuff right just when there is no more gender.
Yep.
Like I think about that all the time, right? Like it's kind of going away. So
Mm-hmm.
just like move on right beyond it. These are all structural root issues. It's not a male female thing. It's like we are living in systems designed, by 50% of the population for them,
Mm-hmm.
and or less than 50% of the population. And it's just not working anymore, and we need to rethink it all. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like it required you having this internal shift. And what strengthens you on the times where you start to doubt that or get challenged?
Yeah, I don't doubt my gut or my
Mm-hmm.
intuition anymore. That I don't know if you have voices inside your head, but when I was younger, I had a ton of voices in my head all the time. Oh no, what'll they think of me? Oh no, what about this? Maybe I'm not doing it right. I don't have that stuff in my head anymore. I just flow. And, I pay attention to feedback. I pay attention to comments from people. I follow the energy. I notice what's working, what's not. I'm constantly interrogating myself and the conditioning that I have, and unwinding things that I've learned from the past that I need to let go of. Done tons and tons and tons of personal work, and there's lots more to do, obviously. But I really think the whole pathway is you have to transform yourself before you can transform systems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm here to do. I want to transform systems that'll work for all. And at SheEO, we're transforming ourselves and systems by working on the world's to-do list, by actually doing that work each day, trying to invent new business models and then going, oh, that's a problem too, creating more inequality. Oh, that creates more waste. Don't want to do more harm. How do we rethink things? So we're constantly, as a community, as you are aware, going through this process together, learning from ventures who are out in front with some really cool new business models. Is this something that is going to become a new business practice? Are these ways of hiring more equitable? Are these practices around racial justice working or not? What do we need to do next? How do we get these from a single instance of justice to like systems of justice? And it's work, and it's joyful too. We have a lot of fun doing stuff together as well. But the stepping into, checking your privilege, recognize like who's around you, who's in the room, who can you invite in, that's being put to the margins consistently. How do we create a much more inclusive community and get in relationship with one another, so that we can understand all of the issues that we're facing, so that we can actually create the societal approach and this economic approach that benefits everyone.
Tell me about your vision for the world that's like healed and whole and beautiful. Like, what would that look like?
You can't, there's a quote from Zita Cobb, who I adore, from Fogo Island, the founder of Fogo Island Inn, who grew up in a little island in the middle of nowhere, far northeast of Canada, off the coast of Newfoundland. And she talks about like, you can't throw out your neighbor. We're all in this together. Right? We're all on the same planet together. And so, yeah, I grew up in a small farming community outside of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And, in a sort of farm culture, when you take what you need, you don't try and keep hoarding things. Like this wasn't how I grew up anyway. When the going gets tough, your neighbors help you out. When your neighbors are in challenges, you walk across the street or down the road and you go help them with what you've got. People come together to support each other's dreams. You have barn raisings. You build things together. That's what happened at our crazy family farm, Saunders Farm. It has been built by thousands of people, and thousands of kids have actually worked there over the last 30 years. It's kind of like an institution outside of Ottawa, and it was this place where I just really learned that everybody, no matter what age or stage, has something to contribute. They hire people of all ages. You maybe work there as a kid, and then you bring your kids, and then you're driving the tractor when you're 75. Like it was just the whole thing that we all kind of work together on this. And so that's a little bit like the microcosm of where I grew up. Not that it was blissful, it was a crap load of work, lots of problems, all the things, but it was a place that took care of people and didn't just like accumulate with a greedy mindset. It was very much about investing back into the community, taking care of one another, noticing who is in trouble and supporting them. And that's the place I want to live, in a place where we're coming from the spirit of radical generosity, where we know that there's enough for everyone and we share what we have. And the more I learn about Indigenous cultures and the potlatch and how they lived in harmony with nature, and when someone accumulated too much, they'd basically have a big party, the potlatch, and they'd give it all away to the community, because just because you're good at one thing of accumulating something like a fur trader didn't mean that you owned all the spoils. It belongs to everyone. And so I really, and it's like, not, don't call me a socialist or whatever the ists or the isms are. Get rid of all the isms and make them wasms, as Satish Kumar says. But it's more this recognizing that we're just part of this earth. We're not the dominant species, not even close. And how can we distribute resources for the highest and best benefit of everyone? It's kind of abstract, but those are the principles behind it. And what cities, if there are cities in that place, look like or whatever, I have no idea. I just, the spirit and the intention of that being that way, I think will just create paradise.
What's the biggest thing stopping us from living that way then? Like, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, so we have been conditioned. So apparently, history tells us that about every 400 years, we have a kind of shift in our values. And so about 400 years ago, we followed, we hit a fork in the road and we went, Adam Smith sounds like a smart guy, self-interest. And so he, proposed this concept of self-interest, and that's how everything works. The world will work when people act on their self-interest. And we have sort of played this out completely to this just like winner takes all, right? Complete winner takes all model. And it's over, right? Like self-interest has me not care for my community, has me not care for others, is to only care for me, accumulate as much as I can, hold on to it. Oh my God, I never have enough. And we're at this point now where that has really pillaged the planet, the self-interested model. And you can see, if you look around the world, even during COVID, it's been very clear. Cultures that are very, very strongly self-interested, what they look like during COVID versus those that were much more community-oriented. New Zealand, for example. We're a small community. We're all together on this island. We need to be sustainable. We need to care for one another. You had a leader who came out with that message versus someone else is like, all for one, all for yourselves. And you can see other examples of that in the world. And so I think we're at this moment where we have to decide, what kind of world do we want to live in? What do we care about? And it's time to rethink Adam Smith's self-interest and move ourselves to a new values representation, and figure out. So I'd say at this point, we literally have all that we need, people. What kind of world do you want to live in? and what are the basic rights for everyone? That's the dreaming.
And letting go of that fear of scarcity.
Because it's just
really
not true.
Trusting each other, trusting that we're held, trusting that we have enough.
Yeah, it's a big, and I think like SheEO is an experiment in that, which is, if you're like, I'd really like that, but I can't, the only way to change your mind on this is to experience it. You have to go into an experience to upgrade the story in your brain. You can't just read a book and go, oh, right, okay, scarcity, that doesn't exist, fine. I feel abundance.
Yeah, and you can't change it by yourself. Like, that's what you're saying.
Exactly.
In community,
totally.
That's where
the only way
gets worked out. Yeah. Well, what's next? What's your next coming out story going to be?
So I think, when we got this whole thing started by focusing on a singular sort of moral injustice, which was it's really hard for women entrepreneurs with great ideas to get money. So we started with that to get you in the door. We are here to fund women entrepreneurs working on the world's to-do list. And we're about to have a real shift in our language. We've evolved significantly as an organization in the last 5.5 years. And now it's more, and you heard me use this language a bit earlier, that we are here to transform ourselves and systems by working on the world's to-do list. So less of a distinction between activators and ventures. We are all here in this community to work together to transform our communities, ourselves. And that is it's a bit of a different message. We're not like just a women's fund. That's not what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
We're really here to work together on the critical issues we're facing, and it starts with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, it's vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. It can be, yeah. And I mean, you start where you are. Some people can jump right in. I mean, we have our team check-ins every Friday, and it inevitably ends in tears because we're just practicing so much being vulnerable with one another and sharing what's really going on. Like, as my friend said this morning, true confessions of things that have gotten out of control. That's what I'd like to share this morning. I just burst out laughing. I'm like, oh, that's a good one. But really, like, starting to tell the truth about what's going on for us so we can help each other. You know, we're living in this culture of like Instagram-orama, which is like, everything's great, it's perfect, it's amazing, when you're having a total meltdown in the back room. So the more that we can actually create those psychologically safe spaces and actual safe spaces for us to share our truth of what's going on, the more we can help each other through this.
And that is countercultural for sure in the
It
Instagram world.
Is. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a group of us queer folks in SheEO that have started meeting, and it's been neat to see that shift start to happen there too, where it's like, sure, we could just get together and share about our organizations and our companies or something, but then there's been this rise up of, no, we want to actually get to know each other and care for each other and at a deeper soul level. So that's really cool.
And that's where it starts, right? I mean, until we get into those depths and really start to tell each other the truth, the opportunities for doing the deep work of supporting each other don't reveal themselves if you stay at surface level. They just don't. We don't really know what's going on. Thank you for doing that. And how's it going? What are you learning?
A lot of queer folks are quite passionate about political things and like speaking out about justice or injustice. And I appreciate that because I'm not necessarily someone who's that inclined, and I am grateful for the people that have worked for that and created so much more space for us over the years. But I'm really excited to meet with a group of queer folks who are, yes, passionate about some of those things, but also want to go to the deep levels in their own soul and their own like what's going on with me, and not just like fight. And so I'm excited to share in there and support people in hearing their souls too.
That's great. Well, I'm excited to follow along with it. I just, so many beautiful sort of like mini miracles happen. Like there's just these leaps forward in progress, however you define progress. But for me, just like a deepening of our connection when we come together and we just connect, right? And it's a thing that, and for me in particular, I'm a very much a get to action person. It's connecting with a common purpose. And so our common purpose of like working on the world's to-do list together, it's a project. And there's actually tangible things that happen each year. You can see the impact that our ventures are having. You can see how we're working together. You can see spin-off groups like the Queer Collective coming together in communities because of people showing up to work on these critical issues. And it's, I just feel like the ripples out from this will create more connections and more permission and invitation for others to do this as well. So, because like you said, it's the culture is quite rooted in us, and there's a lot of work to get that conditioning off us.
But it's scary. Like it's scary to show up at that level of honesty and vulnerability I had a one-on-one with someone from the group recently, and like I dared to share what wasn't working in my business and like what struggles I'm having. And, you know, it's a mindset shift, because usually it's like on a call when you're meeting someone new, you want to present your best face and see if there's a way that they could become one of your clients. And I'm like, if I share this, that's going to shoot any possibility of her being my client out of the water. And yet she thanked me for sharing and was like able to, I think, connect in a more human level. And I'm excited to see what that brings forward.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we just need to do the opposite of what we think is the right thing to do. So in many ways, what you just said is, like one of the best things you can do with your potential customers is say, I'm really struggling with this thing. I wonder if you'd have any advice for how I would deal with something. People love to help. People like to get in there with what they know how to do. And so when I was looking to raise money way back in the day, one of my first things ever, my genius uncle said to me, if you want money, ask people for advice.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want advice, ask for money.
So
Right? Like it really
true.
flips it around.
Yeah.
And it continues to blow my mind. The more that we actually reveal what isn't working or the vulnerabilities, the more we create places for people to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you keep it high level and like, everything's fine, there's just no way for people to root with you
Mm-hmm.
and to connect with you.
Yeah. And I interviewed B, a link earlier in the season, and I shared with her about the fact that I had this underlying belief always that if I tell people what's really going on and what I really want or need, they'll do everything they can to make it not happen. And the more that I like share things out loud and have a community that is actually radically generous and have this new experience, it's like, it's really shooting that out of the water.
Yeah. It really is so simple.
Mm-hmm.
It really is so simple anyway, and it's challenging to break through all the things we've been told.
Yeah. And to keep trusting when, our conditioning has said otherwise for so many years.
Yeah. Yeah. Trust is huge. Trusting yourself, trusting others.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for this.
Yeah. Thank you for being who you are in the world and sharing a new way of being and inspiring so many of us.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on your beautiful show.
Thanks for listening to the Coming Out Chronicles. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. And if you think it would be helpful for someone else, please share it with them. If you'd like to connect with me, reach out on social. I'd love to support you on the next chapter of your coming out story. Until next time, this is Nancy Shadlock from Centered Life Coaching.